think I should start by saluting the Afghani people for their resistance to imperialism over these years. A country that has been devastated. A country that has been devastated by decades of civil war and imperialist intervention. And I think it's quite remarkable that a poverty-stricken country or people can resist for such a long time, despite the presence of imperialism and their intervention forces and warlords and being ripped apart. But there is something so solid in there that has resisted being cowed and subjugated by imperialism. The same story in Iraq, really, when the US imperialism met the rock of resistance of the Iraqi people. All these resistance struggles have fed and accumulated into this magnificent victory, I think, which led to the stopping of the US-led intervention into Syria. And I think it is a victory. We should not minimize its strategic importance, because what the United States was embarking upon wasn't born out of its moment, whereby they decided suddenly to go and intervene in Syria. Wesley Clark, the former Supreme Commander of Allied forces in Europe, revealed that the plans to destroy a number of countries were well underway back before even the invasion of Afghanistan. And he named, after invading Afghanistan and Iraq, he named Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran. These are his exact words, and he was quoting Pentagon generals he met a few days after the 11th September terrorist attack. And you can go back even further into the mid-1990s and the collapse of the Soviet Union. The outcome of that led to a much more aggressive US imperialist strategy to expand while, as they say, the iron is hot, to impose world domination. This entire strategy has collapsed, I think, before the resistance of the peoples of the Middle East and Afghanistan. Plus, quite importantly, the peace movements. The people of Britain, the United States, and France have shown that after years of lies and deception and sending young men and women to go and fight the peoples of the Middle East is not only a criminal act, but it's also, these are also acts based on lies and deception. And the lies and deceptions of the imperialists have caught up with them. And the British people, I think, played a magnificent role in forcing a number of opportunists in Parliament to also vote against going into war on Syria. Having said all that, I think one has to also be cautious because US imperialism is not going to abandon its aims, because its aims are based on capitalist needs, on imperialist needs, and these needs encompass gas and oil and raw materials and cheap labor and so on. This is a system, unfortunately, that cannot do without expansion and war. So one has to encompass this idea of achieving victories while at the same time being wary of the intentions of the imperialists. They have suffered a defeat, but we have to be also cautious that it might be a temporary defeat. And I think in this temporary defeat, they might resort and will resort to different tactics. Having been defeated in Iraq and suffering defeats in Afghanistan, they resorted to a form of proxy war in Libya, whereby their allied forces would militarize people's demands, engage in a form of civil war, and then NATO would intervene with special forces and airstrikes. They wanted to emulate that strategy in Syria, and they could not achieve this for a number of reasons, including, I think, the sharp awareness of the masses in Syria, who, although yearning for democracy and freedom themselves in the fight against dictatorship, were also resolutely anti-imperialist. And I think the Syrian people's struggle will show that one of the reasons that the US could not really hit Syria in the way they wanted was that the overwhelming majority of the Syrian people, though yearning for democracy, also opposed imperialist intervention. Now, in Syria, they wanted to do what they did in Libya. This has failed. Failed because of the British, American, French people, and Russian and Chinese opposition. And I think when talking about Russia and China, we need not be supporters of either. We might disagree about the nature of the social systems there, but I think one has to recognize that there are contradictions in the world. And in these contradictions, one should utilize anything that comes down our way in terms of fighting against US imperialist wars and wars of intervention. I think what the United States will resort to is more proxy wars. This time perhaps not backed by direct military intervention, but more in terms of divide and rule tactics. The Middle East is composed of many nationalities, religions, sects, and this is what the United States has been playing upon for the past 10 years or so. This, unfortunately, will be an increasing phenomenon, because having failed to intervene directly, they will increase their reliance on their reactionary allies and the Arab regimes led by Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and so forth, plus the local reactionary forces, including the so-called jihadists and Al-Qaeda type terrorists. Terrorism, and the title of today's talk is about terrorism, has a two-way influence on the situation. One is that it provides pretext for the imperialists to intervene. And the second is that they play the leading role in tearing apart the social fabric of these societies, whether it was Iraq or whether it is today in Syria. One of the aims, or rather the way the imperialists encourage these terrorist organizations, because they saw the value in terms of trying to rip apart a cohesive society like Syria. And they will, I'm sure, try the same in Egypt. In Egypt, there's a very large Christian minority, and the plan there is quite evidently, at least it's clear to me and to a lot of Egyptians whom I read constantly. They think that this is the loophole or the division within Egyptian society in terms of religious beliefs, or differences rather than divisions, will be played upon by imperialism in any future destabilization of Egypt, with reliance again on extremist takfiris and their ideology supported by the Saudis and the Qataris. One thing I want to sort of finish on in a way is to also salute Stop the War Coalition. I think the Stop the War Coalition has played a magnificent role, not only in terms of demonstrations and pickets, and at times it was very difficult to organize demonstrations and so on because people did not feel there is imminent danger. But the educational role of Stop the War is quite important. Whether it is the leafleting, whether it is the meetings in the local branches, and the excellent Stop the War website. I think this educational role will acquire more importance in the coming months. Because imperialism is not intervening directly with boots on the ground or with airstrikes, you will get less awareness of their intervention. But their intervention is not really stopping. It's taking different forms, it's taking different guises, and the educational role of Stop the War will be even more important in the months to come. So I think we should all support this type of activity and support Stop the War and try and stop imperialism where it hurts them most in their own homelands. Thank you.